Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this session. Thank you to the Technology Expanded Performance project, and particularly to Rui. So it's very nice to see so many familiar faces in the screens and emerging from the audience. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And it's very interesting hearing all the presentations so far. There's a lot of crossovers and a lot of entanglement between the topics and the trajectories of these different projects. So it is going to be a nice discussion for sure after these presentations. So I'll present the project Moving Digits. I will briefly contextualize it in my previous work and tell you a little bit what are the next steps also in the project. So the presentation focuses a lot the user-centered design approach, and that again is a link to a previous presentation by Atao, because as he mentioned, I worked at the EV group for 2 years with the Enabling Audiovisual Interfaces project, and I owe a lot to Atao and to the EV group, a lot of the methodologies and approaches that I've been pursuing since then. And I think Moving Digits also fits in that lineage of using very user-centric approaches to design. So my background is mainly as a media artist is on audiovisual performance. So I've been doing VJing, augmenting musical performance with visuals, and combining these two practices, so live visuals and live music performance. And my PhD was on that topic and was very practice-based research. And after a short postdoc at the university where I did my PhD at Aalto University, I applied together with Atao to a Marie Curie fellowship, and I was lucky to obtain it. So I spent 2014, 2016 with EV Group. And after that, I got a assistant professorship at Madeira Interactive Technologies Institute, or University of Madeira. So I went back to Portugal after 10 years abroad. And while in Madeira, I started planning my next stages of research, and I wanted one of the possibilities that came up in different discussions was to work with dance and to apply some of the perspectives I had been exploring in my PhD and in the Enabling Audiovisual User Interfaces project to dance. So together with other partners, which I can present right away. So Hochschule Düsseldorf in Germany and Sotumatu Tansulav in Estonia, we prepared an application to create it to the Creative Europe program, and we obtained a small cooperation project funding for the project we called Moving Digits. So what is the aim of the project? We aim to enhance audience understanding and engagement in contemporary dance performances using interactive visuals. So how can we use visualization and visuals in dance performance in a way that enhances the user experience? So there's been a growing usage and growing interest of using visuals in dance, and we are interested to investigate how we can bring or how they are being used and how they can be used in a meaningful way from the artist's perspective, but also from the audience perspective. As a kind of a secondary aim, we thought that it would be interesting also to investigate, once we create these visuals for dance performance, what can happen to those visuals after the performance has happened. So since we create all this visual material, can it be reused in a meaningful way again after the performance has occurred? Because our hypothesis is that we can, and that it can be interesting for documentation. It can be interesting for audiences who, for some reason, could not be at the performance. It could be interesting for the dancers themselves to have access to the visualizations that are produced in the performance in a repurposed way. And we'll get to that. Actually, in Moving Digits, we're not in that stage yet. But I'll try to paint the big picture and the big timeline of Moving Digits and tell you where we are. Moving Digits has been growing. So from the initial trio of partners, other partners have joined. So actually, Tanzhaus Nordrhein-Westphalia, Tanzhaus NRW has been an associated partner from the start. Shortly before I obtained the funding for the project, I actually moved back to London, where I am now. So University of Greenwich joined as an associated partner consequently. We've discussed Plux, Atal and Frederick. We talked about the company Plux. They are now also partners of the project, so another linkage there. And actually through Plux, many of the researchers working at Plux, they're involved in another research group in Lisbon called Instituto de Telecomunicações, or IT, which is at Instituto Superior Técnico, or the Technical Institute in Lisbon. And IT also joined in the Moving Digits project. And I'll explain what are these different partners doing in the project and what is their role in the project. So I invite you to visit our website, movingdigits.eu, and to learn more after the project and once we finish this session. The presentation will include a series of photos taken during the different moments and the different stages of the project. And here we see William, who I believe is in the audience, and who was also at, I see an arm waving. And William was also at Goldsmiths while I was doing my fellowship there. And he's now in Portugal working at Plux and doing his PhD at Plux. So there's all these linkages. And we see William and Sylvia, who was also part of the Black Box project, setting up some sensors, some Vitalino Plux sensors in a dancer. And this was in our first workshop. We'll come to the sequence of workshops in one of the next slides. But I just want to situate a little bit when we talk about technology for dance, I want to situate a little bit where is Moving Digits, right? So in a paper by Ftili Alaoui et al., this was presented at MOCO conference in 2014. There is a distinction established among tools for generation. So generating new choreographical material, essentially tools that mainly choreographers use, but not only, but mainly for development of choreography. Technology for real-time interaction, so real-time interaction during the performance, so on stage. Technologies for reflection, so for documentation or for kind of archival or for reflection on the dance performance or on the dance process. And then technologies for annotation, and that Carla mentioned that in her presentation, this type of technology among others. So Moving Digits really focuses on the real-time interaction and then on the reflection. But we are, as I mentioned, we're still not in the reflection stage of Moving Digits. We're halfway. Moving Digits is a two-year project. We're shortly after the first year. We're still in the real-time interaction stage. But these are the two types that we are approaching: real-time interaction and reflection. In this presentation, I'll mainly discuss the real-time interaction technologies. So the methodological approaches that we follow with Moving Digits is very much user-centered design. So this is the main approach we follow. We design together with the users being the dancers and choreographers. and we want to design the systems that they consider relevant to use, and that they believe fulfill their needs and expectations. And we aim to work with them from the very early stages of detecting these needs and these wishes. We found that we kind of, to follow our aim, we needed to insert a kind of a change of gear at some point in the process, that we wanted to go from a more broader user-centered design approach when we have a larger group to a smaller group where we can develop performances in a deeper way, with maybe with fewer artists, but with longer periods. So budget-wise, we can have either short events with many participants or long events with fewer participants. So how we designed our sequence of workshops and our sequence of user-centered design events is that we have initially more users collecting more opinions and go to low fidelity, mid fidelity prototyping with these larger groups. And then when we enter the more performative stage, when we're designing not prototypes, but performances themselves, we designed smaller, we designed longer events for smaller groups. And we adopted a perspective called ideographic design, which is to work, instead of working towards more generalizable solutions, work into more dedicated and more individual approaches, following a certain type of ideas. And if this sounds too abstract at this moment, I hope when I present each of the events, this becomes a bit clearer. So these two broad methodological perspectives, user-centered design and ideographic design, were materialized through specific qualitative research methods. We used focus groups, interviews, observation, field notes, and I will present them in more detail stage after stage. I don't know how I'm doing regarding time, but I will just check.
It's been 13 minutes, Nuno, just so you know. We still have two speakers.
So how far am I in my time?
Yeah, you already are over your time, but we want you to finish. But we just want to advise you that we still want to have time for the other speakers and a little bit for debate. Thank you, sorry.
So shall I just present this last slide and then we move on, or do you want me to move on right away?
You have to decide what is, we don't have a lot of time. Can you do 2 minutes more, 3 minutes to wrap up?
Sure, I'll just present this slide, which I find that it's quite useful. Because it materializes these kind of vague stages that I mentioned into concrete steps. So we conducted an ideation workshop in stage 1 in Tallinn in February, where for 2 days we worked with a group of 10 participants. We had an international call, which was quite competitive because we had 93 applicants from all over Europe and even beyond. And we had a tough selection process to select 10 participants who would take part in this. And we worked with these 10 dancers for 2 days. We ran a focus group to identify their needs in terms of technology for visualization in performances. And because we wanted to have a user-centered design approach, we wanted the aesthetics of the performance to kind of emanate from the dancers themselves. So we proposed a series of exercises to stimulate the dancers to discuss and to present visual ideas. So we had 2 sketching exercises that resulted from that, and that kind of informed our visual development from then onwards. We took these ideas, actually we wrote a paper on this stage 1, which was presented a month ago in the Arte conference in Braga. that allowed to create kind of design specifications or design recommendations that the dancers expressed, and that informed our prototypes. So we, based on those design specifications or design guidelines, our team created 4 different prototypes, each addressing different needs and different strategies identified by the dancers. After that, we invited the dancers again to test our prototypes and to give feedback. Did the prototypes fulfill the wishes they expressed in stage 1, and how can those prototypes be taken further? How can they be fine-tuned to their work? So we ran a 4-day evaluation workshop in Madeira in June. Then in Madeira, we invited, again, we wanted to narrow down both narrow and deepen our approach. So we asked the 10 participants to submit proposals. We had a kind of internal call for proposals for choreographies. And of our 10 participants, 8 submitted proposals. We picked 4, and those 4 choreographers were invited to a 2-week residency in Estonia, to Tansulava, to develop their choreography. And in Estonia, we recruited local dancers. Also, for budget reasons, we couldn't bring we couldn't fly over all the other dancers, so we recruited local dancers to work with these 4 choreographers to develop their performances. Then we had a small presentation in Estonia. This residency took place in August, and recently, a month ago, we had a performance in Tanzhaus NRV of those 4 choreographies. If I have time, I can show a 2-minute video of that show.
Thank you, Nuno. I think we'll, if we have time afterwards in the debate, we will. Thank you very much.